Mic on? All right. Claudia, sit down, please. Come on, what are you doing? It's not just gathering with your friends, okay, Claudia? We're here for purpose, you know. Very good morning. Hello. I'm James Valentine from ABC Radio and Telly and things, and it's a great pleasure to be the moderator of this Meet the Creative panel. I said if there was only 10 of you, we'd take 2 each, do a couple of selfies and get going. So, you know, I'm glad there's sort of like at least 20 so we can actually do the whole thing. And, you know, look, more are going to flood in once word gets out. They'll be flooding into this one this morning. So fantastic to have you along. This has got one of those sort of general sort of titles of Meet the Creatives, Investigate Creativity, you know, see where the creative spark lies and that sort of thing. So we're going to do this in 2 ways. We'll start with success, and then we're going to discuss failure. And so probably we'll learn something along the way about how these extraordinary individuals have dealt with these sort of things. You know, I have... My main qualifications for being here is that I have a radio show which sort of has, you know, ideas bubbling through it every day. I've had a couple of attempts at various sort of writing things and that sort of stuff. And what I'm finding now is I'm working in reporting on the arts and that sort of stuff. And so my main qualifications is I wear the colourful socks. And that just says, he's the arts reporter. He knows what he's doing. So it's working for me so far. What we've got on the panel today. Michael ZAVROS over here, extraordinary artist. I don't think there's a medium he hasn't attempted yet, or it hasn't been invented if he hasn't had a shot at it. You've got CLAUDIA KARVAN, actress, producer, you know, fantastic contributor to our visual culture. You've got Sam Marshall, extraordinary architect and creator of all sorts of things here and around the world. You've got ADRIANO ZUMBO, master cook, baker and creator of or perhaps not the creator, but it's, you know, the leader of the macaron renaissance. And we thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
It's also a rare panel. We've got 2 people whose surname begins with Z. I've never done a panel where that's ever happened. So, you know, I think it's going to be great things that come out of this. So what I wanted to open up first is the moment when you know. I want you each to describe a moment when you know this is it, this is the idea. This is the thing I'm actually going to work on. I don't know whether you're someone who's besieged by ideas, you know, you have hundreds of them and you've got to sort your way through and pick one, or whether you're someone that's like, there it is and you pursue it for years. It's a single sort of vision approach. So whatever it is, you know, I want to know the moment when you go, yep, this is the one, I'm going to follow this through. And I imagine that there'd be 2 ways of thinking about this. There might be a particular project, you know, this is I love the macaron, I'm going to really try to do this, or yes, I've got this commission, we're going to really go for it, you know. Or it's sort of the moment at 16, 17 or 18, or something when you went, I can't do anything else, I'm going to have to keep following this kind of passion. So we'll just go in alphabetical order, I suppose. So, you know, CLAUDIA KARVAN, you can start.
Oh.
Or did you want to
No.
give it a moment? You all right? Which is it for you? Singular vision or...
Well, the first thought that sprang to mind was with Love My Way, and we'd started, I don't know if you're familiar with the Foxtel show I did about 7 years ago. It was my first producing outing, and I was talking to my fellow producer about what are we going to do. You know, he was saying we could do a spin-off series from Secret Life of Us, or we could do this crime show idea. And so we were due to go to the meeting and with the writer and talk about, well, what new series are we going to devise? And it was literally I think it was actually, there were still toll booths on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Right. And I was driving and I just grabbed a napkin and got a pen and did a mud map. And it was the girl, Frankie, and then the ex, the daughter, the mother, and it just came like that. And I love mud maps. We, you know, use them at school for studying and stuff. And I literally brought that to the meeting, pulled it out, bit of hanky with written, and John, and that's what it became. And
damn, other people spend a lot more time than that.
well, I mean, it's a distillation of things, isn't it? I just done Secret Life of Us, which was exploring your 20s, and it was about Melbourne, and then it's a reaction to that, which was Love My Way, was about exploring your 30s and exploring being in blended families, not broken homes anymore, they're blended families, and that phenomena which was happening, which was a big change.
And I think I've heard a similar story, like
childhood.
Matt Groening describing the Simpsons pitch as not dissimilar to that.
Oh,
That it was
really?
about he's sitting in the waiting room and just sort of goes, oh, I don't know, family, Simpsons, Springfield. That was about it.
There's a brilliant TED talk. I know TED talks get a bit, you see a lot of them, but is it Elizabeth who wrote Eat, Pray, Love? Don't hold that against her. But she does this phenomenal talk on creativity, and she describes that moment and talks about.
But if they'd said no, would you have hung on to that mud map? Like, did you
Probably
look at that and go, oh, I just have to follow this through?
No, probably not. I'm a bit bad like that. I'll come up with an idea, and if it's not immediately successful, I'll come up with another one.
Michael,
My longevity.
what sort of moments have you had when you've gone, this is it, I have to do the flowers?
Those moments for me now, I have to be doing something that sort of puts my mind at ease or lets me dream. So it could be washing up or doing something that's very menial or very basic.
Yeah, or the mic.
Am I on? There we go. Sorry. So at the moment, I'm swimming. Swimming is the new thing in our household, and doing laps seems to sort of put me in this headspace where things just arrive, and I try to hang on to them until the end, until all the blood has seeped out of my brain. And
There's no pen handy.
no,
at the bottom
no.
of
Is
the
there an earlier moment, like say in your teenage years, when you say to yourself, this is what I have to do. I can't do anything else but draw.
That was always for me the only thing that I would ever do is make art, and I was just this little kid that just would draw, and I was never asked what I'm going to be when I grow up. It was just this mantle that was sort of placed on me as a child, and it was that was never a choice for me. It was trying to make it all line up and to make it happen. But when I would think of the physical works, it used to be a very easy process because I was appropriating, and I would find my work out there in the world that it didn't belong to me until I seized it. So flicking through a magazine, and that's the thing that I'll paint, and I approach it with such certainty, and I could never explain why I did, but I would see my work in other places. But now they're things that I confect, and that creative moment is a very drawn out process for me, and it's a bit like a pokey machine. I sort of think about how I'll have an idea to paint Claudia, for example, and that will just be the beginning of this idea, and then later you'll see something that will inspire maybe an aesthetic, and then the concept or how all of these things finally click together. It's like all the cherries just finally line up, and okay, now we're ready to go with this portrait.
Yeah, and I think that we often have a conception and possibly misconception that there's these single moments and that sort of stuff.
It can be.
And it can be, but for a lot it's also just, I do this every day.
Yep.
You work every day. I like Randy Newman writes songs in an industrial estate warehouse, and all he has is a piano and a simple recording device, and he just goes there at 9 o'clock. Well, need some new songs for Toy Story 3, and works. There's no single moment. It's just he's always doing it. For the architect, Sam, it's a bit different, isn't it? I mean, it's not like you can suddenly go, skyscraper, gallery, must build one. You've got to wait until someone says, I'd like one.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I find you're retaining all those ideas in your head. You're forever seeing things, seeing opportunities. I totally agree about having time to daydream, to be washing up. You're connecting things. You're thinking about things. Even just sitting at the lights is great. You're looking at something, but you're thinking about something different. Where those ideas come from, I don't know, but they're stored in your head. I find it's usually art and things other than architecture, the things that inspire me, probably because they're abstract, not to copy architecture. I was fortunate that I wanted to be an architect when I was in 4th class at school, and if I think back now, what did I know then that's taken me here? But I had a father that was an engineer. We used to build boats and renovate houses, so there's the creative, very rational man. Yet my mother was very interested in, I guess, the more contemporary side of things. She took us out to see Christo's wrap-up in
Little Bay?
Little Bay. Yeah. We'd go to the Biennales, we'd go to the Benathan Gallery. So there was this two sides, really creative, and that put them together, you get an architect. So I knew from then. So
You're so annoying.
I always chose the subjects
background
that would get me there. So there's been no doubt in my life. Like I said, what would I know when I was 10 years old?
So that's all three of you, isn't it? Are you the same? Did you know as a child you were going to be doing it?
No. I guess for me, it's been as a child I was probably at school and year 9, year 10. I pretty much knew that I wasn't going to fast academic career.
Mm.
I wasn't doing that well. I wasn't focused. I was the kid shooting pen guns into the roof.
Right.
Stuff like that. I was
You might have a mic, so it's quite on at this point, which is a great shame. I mean, often sound check happens before the show, or it can happen during. You know, so it depends on. This is the creative process at work right now.
good now. No?
Can you hear that now?
Keep talking. Try again. Yeah, that's it.
I'll just talk like this, yeah.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. So what were you as a child? You didn't touch a stove or do anything.
I
or
didn't touch a stove. I come from an Italian family. My mum cooked everything.
Right.
It was like, dinner was ready every night. Whatever you wanted, I'll cook it for you. But I grew up in a supermarket. So my parents owned supermarkets, IGAs, and I was around food all the time. Probably not, the food. Probably not the healthiest food, but I pretty much lived in the junk food aisles, like the lollies, the biscuits, the chips. As a young kid, it was free, and I used to have to go to work with my parents every morning and get a lift because I was young, I didn't have a car or anything. And I'd sit in the shop waiting for them. They were setting up the shop, and while they were setting up, I just had my bag open, and I was just loading it up for the day.
You have worked out. You have worked out since then, haven't you?
Yeah, so like I had this. I built this encyclopedia for sweets as a young kid. Yeah, like in my head. Like I know what chocolate bars are. I know what all that stuff is.
Right.
And for me now, pursuing the pastry career, it's helped because you can make those things gourmet.
Yeah. So you can use that one, I think. So you developed a sweet palate at that point.
Yeah, definitely did. I developed a sweet palate, and I was at school. I knew I wasn't going to pursue university or anything like that, and I got to when I was 15. I was in year 10. I did my school certificate, and I got work leave the next day. I got a job in Sydney. I grew up in the country, and I left. Said to my parents, I'm going to move in with my sister in Sydney, and got myself an apprenticeship. And it was a big gamble. I wasn't definite that I knew I loved it.
Was that chef or pastry chef?
Pastry chef.
Pastry chef.
Yeah, but within months, I was hooked. I loved it. I haven't looked back ever since. It's it's a way for me to focus. Because a lot of other things I don't focus. When I read books, I can't focus. I read 3 pages and I get frustrated because I forgot what I just read. So, cooking for me is an outlet where I can express myself and let all the energy inside my head.
So what's the creative moment in cooking? Is it like here's a bunch of ingredients and I can see what this is going to be in my mind? I can taste what this is. I can imagine this object.
It happens in a lot of different ways for me. That's one way. Definitely, I don't mind that. Having a bunch of ingredients in front of you and having to create something is a great challenge. Having a database in your head, you can just break it up. What balances with what. But there's other ways where you come up with a name first. I like to name my cakes. And if sometimes I come up with a name first. It depends where someone might be talking and they say something like catchphrase or something like that. Click and go, that's a mad name for a cake. And I'll write it down.
That's fantastic.
Work the cake backwards from that.
So tell me about one of those names and then the cake that resulted. That's right. Yeah. Man versus coconut. Right. That's right. They're gone. It'll come back as we go. Gee, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because you don't think of food necessarily being inspired by title. I mean, I always think ingredient, I suppose, or.
I think it's the first. Being in business, it's the first element of attracting a person to the product.
Right.
Because if you read something that just says vanilla cake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's vanilla cake, it's all right. But if you can capture them and make them laugh or make them relate to whatever that name is in some sort of way, as a child or as in their career or as in their life, I mean, you're one step closer to connecting them with that cake.
Do you worry about the title?
It's an ongoing thing with television. It's a running joke. We called Love My Way. It was always called Is This It? Which was actually the Strokes album, the title of their album, which was a coincidence. And they kept refusing it, saying, no, it's too negative. People will say this is shit. And so we went through it's agonising. And then we went to titles of songs, and I can't remember the band now that sung Love My Way.
Love My Way.
Anyway, so we got it from that. But same with Spirited, the next TV series I did with Jacqueline for Foxtel. We were calling that Stranded because we loved the song Stranded. But yeah, it's ongoing. We've got one at the moment which is on to its 4th title. And the crazy thing is, it's like naming a child. You know, once the child has that name, you never think about it again. But when you've got the luxury of, and you have to listen to everyone's criticisms, really it's the deadline that forces you.
But I think title really matters in television and film and that sort of stuff, because, and you know when it's right, when it's captured the whole essence of it. If it's not quite working, then it's really annoying. You know, does it worry you? Does title worry you?
Yeah, it does. You know, in the arts, we think titles shouldn't matter so much. It's not really about the work. But if the work does have a really fantastic title, it's something that is catchy. It becomes embedded in the work. So sometimes it's a very didactic thing, like this painting in the fair. It's just called Brontosaurus because it looks like a Brontosaurus, and it's just such an obvious, simple reveal, I suppose. But at other times, like I did a painting called Bad Dad, and it's just such an important part of how that work functions. It's such a simple, lowbrow title on actually quite a loaded art historical work, but I think that sort of contrast is sometimes a good thing.
Sam, it's nothing you have to worry about. It's just the Valentine house.
You do the Museum of Contemporary Art, and it's called the Museum of Contemporary Art. Even though we are now grappling for the first time, we're doing a block of apartments in Double Bay. What are we going to call it? And we've been given quite a free hand by the client, so that's quite daunting. Then
what's on the list so far? We could workshop this afternoon. What's on the list? You know,
Eternal Harmony, or the client's name's Peter Pan, so we thought we could do something on that.
That's
right. So no, it was early days. So ideas,
Panville. But I get irritated with estates and buildings in Australia that are all called Somerset and Gloucester and Berkshire Park or Pine Waters and all this sort of stuff. I go, oh come on!
So we're working against that. What's been done so far?
Definitely. Let's just go back because we were halfway into sort of what your sort of creative spark. So when I'm sitting here briefing you, I'm going, you know, we've got this block of apartments and it's going to be 12 and we want this, that and the other. Are you is there sparks of creativity going on there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think you're sort of getting a lot of the components together that you've got to put in place, which can be the council requirements and all those things. You're thinking, how on earth can I put this together into a building? With the MCA, it was, how can we design a building now that we know is going to change over the next months? Right. And it forever changing to satisfy certain people, satisfy the client, and forever trying to make this thing look great, because they wanted it to be a contemporary looking building. And there's one little sketch, it's about that big, it's drawn with a biro, that was that initial idea, and it's just having these components that can move around, and it doesn't matter if they're randomly spaced, and that's what the building is. You can move them around. Client would say, can we do this? Yes, you can do that. Quite often when we did it, we'd make the building better because it was flexible like that, but it's one sketch. Yeah. That was the beginning.
Yeah. All of you have to balance, you know, here's what I want to do, here's my dream, and then audience, and whether or not it's going to work. You almost start, when you that description of title, it almost sounds like you start with consumer first. This will get them, this means that they'll eat my vanilla cake. But what's the balance between this is what I want to do, but this is what I need to do to make a living, to have an audience?
It's pretty difficult these days. So a lot of the time you don't fully create to what you want to do. Obviously, because you've got to think of so many things, with labour, price point, all that sort of stuff comes into effect. So it's not pure creativity to what you want. So the original idea, what you come up with, obviously gets culled back a little bit. So something I do in a competition, or something I do, for a friend who says, make me a cake, do whatever you want.
Right.
So is it different to what I have to put into the store, because obviously there's so many things that cut into it, which are overheads and all that. So.
But you still think of that as creative? I mean, I do. I tend to think that that's also then, the constraints will also then give rise to creativity.
And then you've got to think also to attract a bigger audience. You can't have everything how you want it. So you've got to have some things that are a bit more commercial, and some things that are a bit more creative to still stay with who you are.
Yeah. And Sam, how much of that is for you? At some point I'm saying, well, no, I don't want it to be this, or that won't sell, A great client is one that will
brief you what they want and then say you're the expert. Happened a number of times with Lisanne McGregor. Here's some options. This is what we think we could do here. What do you think? And she said, well, I like that, bit of that. What do you think, Sam? You choose, you're the expert. It's wonderful when they do that because that actually puts you on the spot to even criticise your work and do better.
I watched the Gary documentary the other day on the building of the UTS building. Now that seems to be where the architect gets to the point where it is like, you do what you want. We're buying you doing what you want.
Exactly, yes. Buying a product. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. Would you like that, or is it actually, in a sense, it's more interesting to have to deal with real world issues?
That's a dream job. You still got to deal with real world issues, but to have that flexibility to do that, that's amazing. You know, once in a lifetime those sort of jobs come along, but it would be great.
How much for you is it that okay, this is the show I want to make, but we need to get ratings. It needs to be 12 episodes. You know, it's the practicality versus the creative dream.
And it's expensive. It's government subsidised, so you're beholden to the Australian taxpayer. I think it's something to really seriously keep in mind in our industry. Then there's also just the practicalities of schedules and personalities, people who are available. I mean, it's a movable feast. You can book a whole lot of directors and they'll get feature films up, and then suddenly you're scouting around for directors who haven't happened to take a job.
Do you like all that? I mean, that can be then a constant stream of creativity, isn't it? You know, like, that's not going to work, but if we do it over here, it can. Well, let's move it now. You know, that
it is. I mean, I think the creative element for a producer is setting the scene for other people to be creative and making sure that the communication lines are kept constructive, because there's also a lot of it's really expedient making television, so there's a lot of stress. There's healthy egos, which you need. You certainly need a healthy ego to be a good director. So it's about making sure that doesn't hinder the creative process, and that you create pockets for people to have their creative moments, and then make sure that you protect that idea as it travels through quite a long journey. I mean, a TV series can sometimes be 2 years before you're actually on air. And then, yes, you've got lots of different input from your network about casting and about the way the storylines are going, the way they're going to promote it. I mean, I know there's some producers who really tear their hair out about how their show is being promoted, but I think at that point you just go, you know what you're doing, you know your audience, and you have to let go. So I watched this great documentary about showrunners recently, and one of the showrunners was saying to one of the young writers, is this the hill you're going to die on? And it's a really good question to ask, because I think it's something that comes with age, that you can collaborate better, but when you're younger, there is that moment where you just, is this the idea you're going to burn everyone over, or are you just going to cooperate?
I think for me it's just general laziness. I'm not even going to climb the hill. My problem. Michael, do you think about audience? And I mean, I'm thinking of an interesting comment that I was standing in front of major Australian artists on display over here, and somebody sort of went, yeah, he paints for his market now. That's a bunch of his brand, you know, like that's what he does, is that thing, you know. So I'm wondering how, you know, is that something you feel like you have to resist? Do you end up feeling like, you know, you've got to sort of play to your audience as such?
Less and less as time goes on. I think about an audience, like a commercial audience or a critical audience. I make work for myself, and I know a lot of artists say that, but I think if you can manage to do that, and I live and work in, you know, half an hour outside of Brisbane on a property, and so I'm in this self-imposed vacuum, and that helps to insulate you, I suppose.
Yeah. And that's what we think the artist is, isn't it? We think that the artist should be free from the audience. I'm just wondering how real that is. I mean,
look, it is for me. I know it is. It's not for a lot of artists, but I'm quite at a remove. So I mean, we're always talking about the market and what's coming up, and you know, we're taking part in a commercial fair, and it is good to sell the work. But you know, and I've been painting for such a long time, and painting is, I suppose, 90% of the commercial market still. But in recent years, making a performance piece and some large-scale photography where I'm not actually even shooting the work, I sort of become this creative director of these projects, and they're incredibly difficult things to realise, you know, and I'm not used to collaboration or anything like that, but they're these things that for me, I just have to stay focused on and to just keep my eye on the ball, I suppose, and to not let the project be diluted by all the thousands of problems that just seem to arise.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about then when the creativity dries up, when it failed, when you said, either you're halfway into the project and it's just all falling apart, it's not working anymore. Are there resources you draw on, or there's periods where you go, I don't know what to do. I'm not happy about it. Have you had those sort of moments?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the creative moment is the stuff that I do when I'm making all the choices before I physically begin painting, if we're talking about painting, which is still most of what I do. And then the rest of it, the 6 weeks where I'm carefully rendering this thing, that's really not creative, that's actually technical hard work. And then in that time, I'm thinking about all sorts of other things. But there are two very different modes of practice.
And there are times of doubt when you're halfway through the rendering?
Heaps of doubt. We're talking about a project at the moment that I'm really very concerned about making. There are big problems with this thing that I want to make, and I'm scared of it. But I think that's a really good position to be in, where confidence and doubt are just sort of threatening each other, with the inception of this work, and I think that's a good thing.
But is that something you can? I mean, that's something you can say here on Sunday morning, on Tuesday, when the doubt is, the doubt is strong.
Yep.
How do you get through that?
When I'm by myself in the studio and I start making this thing that I'll probably be vilified for, it's not until it leaves me and it's going on the truck that I see it in a new light and I think, wow, that's a painting of such and such, and it's done now and it's gone, and now I've got to think about that audience that's out there. But I'm pretty good at shutting off and just getting the job done, and not thinking too much about it.
Claudia, how do you get through the moment when it's just like, this was the wrong idea, the shoots are going terribly, we've miscast, it's ghastly. Not that that's happened to you.
No, I haven't. I had that. Thankfully.
Or maybe even before that, when you haven't got to that sort of point, but you thought this was going to be good, just doesn't seem to be coming together.
Yeah, I think it's just about staying calm and not surrendering to the negativity and just waiting for it to pass. Because often it is just perception, or it is just tiredness, or...
Have you had fallow periods? Have you had periods where you haven't known what to do next?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, particularly as an actor. And when you're in what they call development hell and you've got, 6 different ideas that you're trying to, bubbling away on the stove, and none of them are really moving. And that's the time when I like to think careers are long and don't panic.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? What do you do when the doubts are there?
I find there's more than enough ideas around in your head. It's a matter of really choosing which one that there is. I think most of the doubt is when you're starting that blank piece of paper, where are you going to go? Which one of those are you going to choose? And quite often it's the side, it's the client, it's all those things that start directing that. Then it gets exciting when you see a glimmer and away you go. But the world's such an amazing place. There are so many great things around to be inspired by. Where to start?
Yeah. So there's been no dry periods in your youth. You were ready to go.
Not from a creative point of view. No. And I think you build up a repertoire. You build up all those ideas, and forever seeing things.
Yeah. Well, somebody said to me that you can practice having ideas.
Yes.
It's the same as anything else, and that in fact the worst thing you do is to try to hang on to them.
Yes.
In fact, better off just sort of having lots of ideas, because you'll continue to have ideas.
Yes. Because I think you do practice architecture, you are practicing and you're learning things as you go along, and I think you've got to be self-critical of what you're doing. I tell my students, you've got to criticise yourself, and because that thing's going to be built. A lot of money's going to go in it, and you can't avoid it once it's built. So you've just got to get it right, so you've got to work on it to make sure it's right.
You looked at the macaron, you said, what the hell am I doing? It's purple. Why am I doing this? What do you do when the doubts are there?
It's a hard one for me, because I'm constantly always in there trying to create, and keep trying to try something, and it doesn't work, and it really hits you hard, I guess, because people are looking at you to be this person out there and the next best thing.
Because that happened reasonably quickly for you, didn't it? Like the moment from you're a perfectly happy pastry chef, and then sort of the next moment you're famous. It's a reasonably quick path, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And so did that then change how you thought about what you were doing?
Not really, not in the early times. It was just, I was going with it, doing what I normally do, and it didn't faze me at all. I guess over the years, and now with so much
Yeah.
And it goes through phases. It doesn't always happen. It's a time where you just have so many ideas. You just go, you know what, I don't really care.
Yeah, yeah.
This is what I love. This is what I
Yeah,
do. And most of the time it's like that. But I do have phases where it's in months where I won't put anything out. I won't do anything like create. I just sort of.
And is that to have a rest as such?
Yeah, I can't agree with my brain. So you always fight with yourself.
Right.
And you can't come to an agreement. So it's I just leave it.
You just leave it.
Until it comes out of it.
And when you're leaving it, are you confident that it will come back?
Oh, I'll come back, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's so many ideas. I mean, I've got pages of ideas. I've got books at home.
Right.
So I could do, if I had the time to actually sit in the kitchen all day, every day,
Right.
just create for the next few years.
It'll all be there. Yeah.
So, things I've just written over the years.
Yeah.
Just getting into
Yeah. I would say that I believe more in practice, work, the 10,000 hour theory and those sort of things than I do in creativity. Would you agree? I agree more. I believe more in practice and work than I do in creativity. That it's, like, yes, you can have an idea, but it actually takes you 6 months to make it. And it's the 6 months of making it that is the difference between the artist or the person that does it than the creative thing. Like, I think we put a lot of emphasis on this creative spark and this creative moment and this vision and that sort of stuff. But the real difference, I think everybody has ideas all the time. People will always come up and tell you a great idea. The difference is the actual work. You agree? Yeah. Yeah. Sam, you agree?
I think the adrenaline rush is when you get that idea and then when you see it finished, if it's successful. I mean, it really is so uplifting to get it right, if you get it right.
If you get it right. But it's the work that matters.
Yes.
It's the work that does
The
it.
completed work, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ideas in it.
Yeah, but to just work away without ideas, which does happen.
Say that again?
Yeah, or in our industry, you can kind of work away and without having lots of original ideas, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can have journeymen,
Yeah.
and then you can have people who have original ideas but aren't supported or get a bit jaded, or so there's a fine line, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I would agree with Claudia that it's, just looking at so much of the work that's out there, there is work that has thousands of man hours and awesome technique, but if the concept, if the ideas are not, if they're not compelling, and I think that has to be paramount, and there's just a combination, really, between the two.
Yeah. Anybody else want to join in? We'll take callers now. 1300 222
And phone a friend.
Or you can text in and off you go. We've got a microphone, so down the front here.
I have a question for you, James.
Oh, yeah.
When did you know that you would be a Wordsmith broadcaster? Were you always comical? Did you always see the lightness in life?
Oh, thanks. Very nice to include me. Well, the first thing I tried to be was a musician. So, so I tend to think, and what I was first was a reasonable musician, then a failed musician. So that I never really became the musician that I wanted to be. And so then, walked away from that more or less. And then the only other thing I could do was sort of write. So I started to write for magazines and I started sort of talking. So to me, I'm not so much driven by creativity as fear of being a school teacher. That's my great fear. And then, I tend to think that I'm humorous, and that was a deliberate decision as well. At some point, to go, you know what? No point in me trying to be serious. I just don't sound serious. No one ever believes me. Like 4 dead in the traffic accident. Oh, really? No one. So there's no point in me trying to make serious points because nobody hears them. So I may as well. So it was quite deliberate to go, okay, well, I'll stay funny, light, whimsical. I'll stay in that space rather than try and be serious.
How important are deadlines in the creative process, especially for Michael and Claudia? Michael, I saw your painting at the Art Gallery in New South Wales. It's amazing. And how long did it take? Did you have a deadline for it? And Claudia, in terms of Love My Way, you mentioned 2 years to get it up and running. And were you writing that on spec, like the original concept? Or they say, okay, we need 10 scripts in a year? How did that go about? So,
Michael?
You want to go first?
Wales painting, yeah.
Yeah, I did have a serious deadline actually, because when Bulgari first announced their prize. This painting won the Bulgari Art Award, and they announced the artist before the painting, and they wanted to do an unveiling of the work 3 months later, and we hadn't really figured out what it was going to be, and so I had a meeting with the curator, Wayne Tunnicliffe, came up to Queensland, and we talked about what this work would be for this unveiling, and so I literally did have the clock ticking and started to make this thing, and it was one of those massive projects that involved early mornings and late nights and all of that stuff, but I love that. That's
Do you prefer that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I get stressed if I'm not stressed.
Get stressed if you're not stressed, yeah. Claudia, I mean, like television is always going to be a deadline. That's it, we've decided to do it, you've got 3 months, it's budget, we need it on air.
Yes, but it's an interesting question because we did pitch it to Channel 10 and they developed it with us, spent a lot of money on it and probably, 5-6 months worth of development. We got our whole team together and then they quite unceremoniously dumped us. And so we were kind of all quite shocked because we thought we were creating pretty special piece of television, and then it sat there for a few months, and then Foxtel we pitched it to them, and they snapped it up, and so then we had this beautiful time where we'd been able to stew on all these scripts, and we went back and looked at them with a very critical eye, and we smashed episode 2 and 3 into one episode, and we removed a whole lot of very boring storylines that we were following up, and came up with a whole lot of different ideas because it was a different tone. They were saying, look, this is HBO, this is, push the envelope. Very different directive to what we were doing for Channel 10. So, yeah, it was a different sort of approach.
And you brought Brendan Cowell in as a writer and then as an actor, like a great creative decision. Do you take credit for his subsequent career? And how is it like working with him?
Claudia does.
He was already...
It's all her fault.
He was already pretty, up-and-coming theatre playwright and monumental hard worker and really highly prolific. He was in the writing room from day one. And yes, he was absolutely inhabiting Tom and auditioning for Tom every day when he was in the room because he's, an ambitious actor. So the awkward moment was when we had to say to him, well, you have to go in and audition. And it was excruciating. And he put a little earring in and did some weird kind of actorly stuff.
Did he walk in and say, hi, I'm Brendan, I'm here to read for Tom? Thankfully the network agreed that he was Tom.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Behind you, Ovi.
Hi guys, this could be for any of you. I heard a talk the other day about trends, and it's always, for me, I always either try and steer clear of trends, but at the same time you want to be, go where people are going. So how do you
Come on,
guys...
look at those glasses, Huh? Hey? Come on.
My wife forced me to wear them. No, it could be for any of you. Just not,
Yeah, so do you try to steer clear of trends? Like how aware of you
Well,
of trends?
you do want to be popular, but at the same time you don't want to sort of just do something because you feel like you
how
should.
aware are you of trends?
Yeah, in my industry, you sort of you take something on. People want ask you for it.
Well, I think it's such a trend at the moment to have these sort of extreme flavours. It's peanut butter, salted caramel, with cherry, with some fudge chocolate. This is a thing of the last few years, it seems to me.
Yeah, totally. So it's pretty, I think, in my industry, everybody jumps on trends in some way. It's what people follow, I guess, in pastry, colours, and that's what they want.
Do you care whether you're following it or whether you're leading it?
I prefer to lead it, but definitely, I think you can't steer clear in some way of following something. And the world's such a big place, and something that you think you created sometimes. Someone else on the world could create it as well. And, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Sam, the client's going to have ideas, because this is the groovy thing that's happening in buildings.
Yeah, I've had those clients. And I think it's important to know what trends are, what's happening, almost so you can avoid them. You know the ground that you're not going to go with, so you're going to be seeing as following that.
But the trend could be perfectly good too. It could be a great idea.
It could be, yeah. I mean, it's. I wouldn't say it's a trend, but to have a building that's sustainable and environmental is, I wouldn't say it's a trend, but it's certainly embodied in all buildings that are designed now. And to me, it's important that you do that. And it doesn't look like that way; it just works. That's a natural thing. So that's one great trend, if you want to call it that. But other than that, I think it's just important to know what's going on. I'm sure it's the same with all of us, just to have a knowledge of how you fit amongst it all.
Claudia?
Well, I mean, obviously the big trend now is TV over film, and that's huge. And yeah, you can't buck that. And that's a really interesting space. I mean, the sad thing is that sometimes you have an idea and a story that you want to tell, and it is absolutely an hour and a half story. It's not it's not an ongoing series idea. But it's a difficult space to work in at the moment, and audiences are really fractured, and they're gravitating towards television, so that's.
But then the trend will lead your thinking, won't it? You'll start to look for the ideas that are going to be, 4 series long, not the short story, not the 90-minute idea.
Yeah, that's right. There's also trends in casting. There might be an actor that everyone suddenly goes, oh, they're amazing, and they've just been in this, and this, and you have to kind of work out whether it's the Emperor's New Clothes or whether they really do have the goods.
Yeah. And kinds of stories too, I suppose. There seems to be a certain kind of story that bubbles through those.
Yeah. A character has to be flawed.
The character has to be flawed.
That's the trend at the moment.
I keep hearing. I'll play some track.
Seriously flawed.
I'll play some track on the radio, and I'll just go, "Oh, that song is so dying for an HBO series to find it." It just sounds like those themes that they use all the time. Do you end up thinking about? Do you feel like you're on trend as a contemporary artist? Would you worry about it at all?
I don't think too much about it, and I think. At times, I've gone against the trends that are in, contemporary practice, and that's been a good thing for me. And we think we're above trends a bit in visual art, but when I look at, like a fair, it's full of art. I think that there are some very sort of obvious trends or threads, but also media-centric. I think about decades where painters put down their brushes after the 80s, and everyone made installation for nearly a decade that followed that. And we then sort of folded into photography and film, and we think that we're not following trends, but at least in a media-centric way, I think that we are.
But what about your idea of sort of like, let's do some performance things now? Is that sort of saying, okay, I need to move beyond just the canvas and the brush?
Not in any sort of deliberate way. It just seemed like the right thing to do. I had a significant birthday at the Melbourne Art Fair last year, and I wanted to sort of mark it in a certain way, and it was a piece that I wasn't in this performance at all, but it was a piece that seemed to echo the painting that I was doing. So it kind of just seemed to work in tandem with other things that I was making, rather than any deliberate shift.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to do that more. There's more sort of tools in your toolbox.
Yeah. I love your age coyness. I had a certain significant birthday. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm interested in how you foresee the future of your creativity, how you might imagine yourself in 20 years' time, 15 years' time, and whether in the height of your careers, do you imagine there may be a sea change, or that the creativity might change in some radical way? Does that ever come into your thinking about your practices while you're working, or is it?
I suppose, Claudia, in a way, you were actress, and then the producer thing is the last decade or so.
Yeah.
Probably longer now, isn't it?
Longer. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what day it is, I mean, sometimes you look out at the landscape and go, oh no, we may not have free-to-air television, we may not have the ABC, everything might be streaming, it all might be Netflix, there may not be Australian stories and Australian voices. That's on a very dire day. Then sometimes, you look at Jackie Weaver's career and you go, wow, look at her, she didn't see that coming at, 68. So it's just, I guess what's beautiful about the careers that I have is that there's endless possibilities and you can't really predict. But I'm happy that I'm in a career where I'm still going to be needed on a set when I'm 80 or 90. I'm working on Jack Irish at the moment, and there's 5 actors who are in their 70s, and it's just such a beautiful place to be on a set with these guys. I think that's a blessing.
Sam, do you think it's just going to keep on going? I mean, architects are, they're a bit like sort of concert violinists and pianists. They can still be working in their 80s and 90s, and we love the output. It's not like a sort of, they don't diminish necessarily.
That's right. They usually say you don't start till you're about 50.
Yeah.
But to me, to me, Jennifer, the excitement is the fact that you don't know what the future holds. It's like sitting here. I've got no idea what the questions are. You're ready. At the end of the tennis court, somebody's going to send that big serve in. How are you actually going to send it back? And that's life too. You have no idea. To me, the excitement of life is you don't know it's coming. So you've got all this stuff that equips you. Where does it actually take you? What's in the future? That's the exciting thing.
You don't have any sense of a major shift that you might suddenly decide to do boat design or something, or?
No, that's a hard one to answer.
Right.
No. No, I don't know.
Hey, some of the other chefs that I've known, they're not pastry chefs, but chefs, will often tend to be sort of, they're looking towards 40, 45, they don't want to be in the kitchen. They want to have, they work hard early, and then that's often about it. What's your thoughts on getting old?
Yeah, I always want to stay in the kitchen. I definitely, I've always already thought about it, moving out of the city and moving up the coast somewhere, just to get a better peace of mind in the head and have a clearer thought on things. It's just a personal. I think I grew up in the country, came to the city to chase my career, and I think now it's to a point where I can sort of run it from another place and just coming out during the week, even just the weekend place. Start from going there as a weekend place, get away for the weekend, and maybe over time it might.
So it's more a different life. You don't see yourself not being a pastry chef or suddenly deciding to have a cafe or something like that. Or
Another thing I want to be is a DJ.
right.
I love electronic music, and electronic music is a big part of my creativity.
Well, I think a lot of sugar and a lot of electronic music could work. Like that could be a good thing. Do you see do you see yourself artists into your?
Yeah, I think it's all I can be. I can't shake this thing, so hopefully I'll be allowed to do that for a long time yet. But I think.
But you've had a lot of change already. Like you've done so many different kind of
so.
works.
And I think creativity is actually the key to rolling with the massive changes that are just happening now at such a rapid rate.
Yeah. Look, I think it's been great. We really should wrap it up, but thank you so much for coming on. Would you thank our wonderful speakers? Claudia KARVAN, Sam Marshall, ADRIANO ZUMBO. Thank you so much. Lovely. See ya.